Next on Currents News, an inferno engulfing Notre Dame, the world-famous Catholic cathedral in the heart of Paris. The questions tonight: what, if anything, can be saved? Today is Reconciliation Monday in the Brooklyn Diocese, and it's a major opportunity to get ready for Easter.
The Bishop of Brooklyn, Nicholas DiMarzio, celebrates Palm Sunday, reenacting Christ's journey into Jerusalem. I'm Tim Harfman, and that story is coming up.
Student singers at a Brooklyn Catholic school recording just like the professionals. I'm Emily Druby, and that story is coming up.
A massive fire is destroying parts of the world-famous Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. The towering spire of one of the most famous symbols of the Catholic faith collapsed and flames spread across Notre Dame's roof. Good evening, I'm Michelle Powers. Liz Faublas is off. The fire broke out on scaffolding near the top of the 850-year-old cathedral just before 7 p.m. Paris time. As record this newscast, a spokesman for Notre Dame said everything is burning. Kristen Holmes reports on the latest developments.
A beloved Paris landmark ablaze, a fire breaking out at the historic Cathedral of Notre Dame.
After walking around the outside of the cathedral, we'd gone a couple of blocks across from the Ile de Cité to Rue Saint-Louis, turned around and looked back and gasped.
As hundreds of firefighters battled the raging flames, Parisians and tourists gasped in horror as the church's spire fell, followed by the collapse of the roof.
For the beauty of it and the art inside, and yeah, I think it's horrible, and I see people crying, I see a lot of emotions, and I'm shocked myself.
French President Macron tweeting Notre Dame of Paris in flames, emotion for a whole nation, thoughts to all Catholics and for all French. Like our countrymen, I am sad tonight to see this part of us burn. The effects felt around the globe.
I've been there and I've seen it, and there's no cathedral. I think I could say there's probably no cathedral in the world like it. It's a terrible scene.
The Paris prosecutor has opened an investigation into the fire. The cathedral was built in the 13th century and is one of the most well-known places of worship in the world, bringing around 13 million visitors each year. Much of the cathedral covered in scaffolding as Notre Dame was undergoing renovations. Kristen Holmes, Currents News.
As soon as he learned of the Notre Dame inferno, New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan went into St. Patrick's Cathedral and prayed. He said he was asking for the intercession of Notre Dame, Our Lady, for the cathedral at the heart of Paris and of civilization, now in flames. God preserve this splendid house of prayer and protect those battling the blaze. Notre Dame is one of the top Catholic cathedrals in the world. Its famous towers and that spire that we saw fall into the flames, easily recognizable by Catholics all over the world. Crux editor John Allen joins me now to talk more about that and the potential impact of the Notre Dame inferno. John, we know that Notre Dame is iconic, to say the least, but it's also significant in the global history of the church. How do we measure just what we lost today?
Well, first of all, Michelle, we don't quite yet know the full extent of what we've lost. Now, just in the last few minutes, we have had a statement from officials at the cathedral and also from the firefighters in Paris that they may not be able to save the cathedral. But, let's not count out Notre Dame yet. I mean, it was significantly defaced during the era of the tension with the Huguenots in France in the 16th century. It was turned into a temple of reason during the era of the French Revolution, and it was counted out. During the Second World War, the stained glass windows had to be removed to prevent them from damage during bombings, and yet each time this cathedral has found a way to come back. Obviously, the prayers of Catholics and non-Catholics alike around the world is that we will somehow see a renaissance of the cathedral once again. But you are quite right. The Notre Dame Cathedral is in many ways Catholic history in miniature. I mean, this is the place where King Henry VI of England, the only king of England ever to also be crowned King of France, was crowned in 1431. This is where Napoleon was crowned emperor in 1804. This is where Joan of Arc was beatified personally by Pope Pius X in 1909. Very unusual thing at the time because popes generally didn't leave Rome and they didn't perform beatification ceremonies. John Paul II visited Notre Dame twice in 1980 and 1997. Benedict XVI was there in 2008. Notre Dame will also go down in 20th century Catholic history as the see of Cardinal Jean-Marie Lustiger, the legendary Cardinal of Paris, who was born into a Jewish family, later converted to Catholicism, spent a lifetime pioneering Catholic-Jewish friendship, turned Notre Dame into an extraordinarily vibrant spiritual hub in the heart of what we think of as ultra-secular Paris. I mean, there is no chapter in church history for the 800 years that this cathedral has been standing there that it doesn't somehow symbolize and capture. So if it is gone forever, Michelle, there's no way to tally that tab. What will be lost is beyond all measure.
Now, John, you've just heard from the Vatican about the Inferno. What did they say?
So the Vatican released a statement indicating that they are receiving the news of this fire with shock and sadness, expressing closeness to Catholics in France and to all Parisians, and saying they'll keep the first responders and others trying to cope with the situation in their prayers. And I would expect in short order to hear from Pope Francis personally as well.
All right, John, thank you so much. We're keeping the city in our prayers.
You're welcome.
We are monitoring the Notre Dame Inferno and will keep you up to date on the latest developments during current news. Turning now to other major news. Today is Reconciliation Monday in the Brooklyn Diocese. It provides Catholics an opportunity to confess their sins and prepare for Easter. Current News' Tim Hoffman has a story.
Churches are open today until 9 p.m. Our Lady of Mount Carmel has been offering the sacrament since this morning. Catholics have been stopping by to confess their sins and prepare themselves for Easter.
Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Gina Caridi is a devout Catholic. She attends daily Mass and leads other worshipers in the Rosary at Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church in Astoria, Queens. But today is special. As she prays, Gina's preparing to receive the sacrament of reconciliation.
This is the sacrament that's going to save your soul and get you into heaven.
It's Reconciliation Monday. Across the Brooklyn Diocese, the Rockville Center Diocese, and the Archdiocese of New York, every church is open, and priests are available to hear your sins. Gina says she went to confession last month, but she's ready to go today.
I think that outside of the Eucharist, the confession is the most important sacrament we have.
It's especially important to go now, according to the church's pastor, Monsignor Sean Ogle.
Catholics are obligated to make what we call the Easter duty of confession and communion at least once a year during Lent or the season of Easter. So it fits very nicely into that pattern. But above and beyond that, it's the most important time of the year for a Christian.
Lilia Ferrero sits anxiously outside Monsignor Ogle's confessional.
I ask always for the Spirit, Holy Spirit, to illuminate me, to advise me, and to try to do every day a better person.
As she fulfills her Easter duty, she's also asking her pastor for guidance.
It's not only confess, it's taking advice from the priest.
If you haven't gone to confession lately, Catholics like Gina have some advice.
Spend a half hour before you go into confession, even if you want to write down your sins the day before or something like that in case you forget. And that's the same thing that I do. I have to prepare.
And for anyone who doesn't make it to the confessional today, call your parish or check the church bulletin or website to find out about the schedule for confessions. In Astoria, Queens, Tim Hoffman, Currents News.
The holiest time of the year for Christianity, Holy Week, began yesterday, Palm Sunday. Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio celebrated Mass in remembrance of the Lord's Passion and led the faithful in procession. Currents News' Tim Hoffman covered that story yesterday.
Reenacting the triumphal entry of Jesus into Jerusalem, Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio celebrated Palm Sunday Mass at St. Mary Gate of Heaven Church in Ozone Park, Queens. The bishop blessed the palms and the faithful with holy water as he processed down the church's aisle.
It's important that we have some contact with the actual events, and by making the procession, we recognize that we follow Christ, follow him in the beginning of the glorious time of Palm Sunday, but we follow him through the whole week.
The pews were packed with palm-holding parishioners assembled for the start of the holiest week for Christians. During Mass, Bishop DiMarzio led the reading of the Passion of the Lord. This year, it was from Luke's Gospel.
Father, if you are willing, take this cup away from me. Still not my will, but yours be done.
The parishioners of St. Mary Gate of Heaven Church participated in the joy of Palm Sunday and also looked ahead to Christ's crucifixion on Good Friday and his Easter resurrection, the foundation of the Catholic faith.
It's very important to me and my family. Most of all, my son that's going to be doing his first communion and teaching him all about our Catholic religion, our Catholic faith, and how important God is in our lives.
I teach second grade, so a big part of this week, every day we speak about Palm Sunday, about each event that takes place. Try to make the children understand that Jesus just didn't die on Good Friday. It didn't end there, that he rose from the dead.
To become ready for Easter, Catholics across the diocese and around the world will pray and reflect upon each of the monumental moments of Holy Week, leading up to next Sunday's universal exclamation, "He is risen." In Ozone Park, Queens, Tim Harfman, Currents News.
Christ's entry into Jerusalem was commemorated with another procession of palms in the Brooklyn Diocese. Dozens of parishioners from the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph gathered at Grand Army Plaza to process with their elaborately decorated palms. The procession ended at the Co-Cathedral, where the faithful gathered in Mass. Net TV is the place to be for Holy Week coverage. Special live programs will be televised throughout Christianity's most important time of the year. On Tuesday, the Chrism Mass, celebrated by Bishop DiMarzio from the Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph, airs at 7:30 p.m. The full Holy Week television schedule is posted at netny.tv. There's a lot more news headed your way. An update with the latest from Paris on the Notre Dame Inferno. The world-famous symbol of the Catholic faith is burning during Holy Week. New information tonight on the soaring number of measles cases, while in New York, some Jewish leaders fear something else is spreading. And Brooklyn Catholic Academy students turned recording artists, how they ended up with an album. Updating our top story, the Notre Dame Inferno, a major blaze engulfing one of the most iconic and ancient cathedrals in the world. Parts of Notre Dame gone forever. Pillars of flame and billowing smoke over the heart of Paris, the French capital. Authorities are not certain how the fire broke out at around 6:30 tonight local time, but they believe it could be linked to renovation work that the cathedral was undergoing. Televised images showed the church's iconic steeple ablaze and collapsing, history that cannot be replaced. The 850-year-old cathedral has withstood world wars and political turmoil throughout France's history. City officials cordoned off the area around the church and urged people to evacuate. In 2018, the Archdiocese of Paris opened an urgent fundraising appeal to save the cathedral, which was starting to crumble. No word yet on how the church will rise from these ashes. Notre Dame Cathedral is one of the largest Catholic churches in the world, located in the heart of Paris on the Ile de la Cité. It was built between the years of 1163 and 1345 and is considered one of the best examples of French Gothic architecture ever constructed. Known for its flying buttresses, gargoyles, rose windows, and its world-famous organ made with 8,000 pipes. Also among the many historical artifacts is the famous bell tower, the setting for Victor Hugo's famed historical novel. The bell had since been resigned to ring automatically, but the iconic cathedral has suffered major damage throughout the centuries. During the French Revolution and during World War II, and in December of 1999, Notre Dame was damaged once again by a winter storm. The seat of the Archbishop of Paris, Notre Dame was also the site where Napoleon declared himself Emperor of France in 1804 and where Joan of Arc was beatified in 1909. The head of the U.S. Bishops' Conference, Cardinal Daniel DiNardo, is calling for prayers tonight in the wake of deadly tornadoes that hit the South. He expressed sorrow over the loss of life and destruction as a result of the natural disaster. At least 7 people have been killed. The cleanup is now underway after the massive storm swept through the southeast over the weekend. Natasha Chen has the story.
All of a sudden you're crouching on the floor, crying, praying that it's not you, It's crazy that it just happened to us.
A deadly storm system moving from Texas all the way up the East Coast killed several people over the weekend, including 2 children who were killed when a tree fell on their car.
This is the unimaginable. You can't imagine that happening, a tree hitting a car while you're going down the road. So it was very upsetting.
Tornadoes damaged homes and businesses in Texas and Alabama. And in Mississippi, a tornado destroyed the only volunteer fire department in the small community of Hamilton.
All the roads were blocked, trees on every road, so we had to start cutting out roads to get to people. And our initial response is to come here and get equipment to go to the scenes. And when we got here, the roof was collapsed on all of our trucks. We couldn't get anything out.
And it wasn't just tornadoes. High winds, hail, and torrential downpours also wreaked havoc, covering an area that put almost 90 million people under severe weather threat. For those impacted, they know the cleanup process has just begun and will take time.
Working with FEMA, our federal partners, to get assessment of just how much damage do we have, how many houses have been destroyed. So this is the recovery process that we've been through, unfortunately, many times.
In Hamilton, Mississippi, I'm Natasha Chen.
The measles outbreak is only getting worse. With 90 new cases reported in just 1 week, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is saying records could now be broken. And that's not just in the United States. There are hundreds of thousands of cases worldwide. As cases in New York climb, some Jewish leaders fear something else is spreading: anti-Semitism. With Passover beginning this Friday, there is concern that the infectious disease could continue spreading, as well as backlash against the Jewish community. Most rabbis and community leaders advocate for vaccination and have taken extra steps to curb the epidemic. A young Catholic student is harnessing the power of prayer, hoping to convert Governor Andrew Cuomo after he signed into law New York's extreme abortion bill.
My mom and dad told me this bill for abortion might pass, and I prayed really hard that it wouldn't, but it did. So I've come up with an idea. I know that the rosary is sharper than any sword, so I'm guessing that this idea is the second strongest.
That is 9-year-old Jack, who, with the help of his dad, started convertcuomo.pagexl.com. On this site, you can submit your commitment to prayer via email. Jack and his family hope to reach 200 commitments by Easter Sunday. The students at Blessed Sacrament Catholic Academy took learning outside the classroom today, a field trip to make music. Currents News' Emily Drewby reports from a recording studio in Williamsburg.
These students leaving the classroom for a major field trip to a recording studio. But the key to this trip is they're not just visiting the studio, they're actually recording. 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade choral students at Blessed Sacrament Catholic Academy have been practicing for this dynamic moment for months. Students Jasmine and Amy say all their hard work is finally paying off.
It feels really exciting. I feel like I'm just going to do my best.
Kind of nervous, but I'm excited to sing all the songs with my classmates.
The idea came from the school's choral director, Julian Hook.
It's very exciting, very, very exciting to work in professional conditions with great musicians in a fantastic recording studio, and for the kids I think it's an amazing and unique experience to be working in this beautiful environment. I think they won't forget that.
The idea struck a chord with the school's principal, Mary Lou Selmer, who helped turn the idea into reality.
But the most important part is that we want to give these children something besides academics. You have to give them some kind of enrichment, because if you don't give them enrichment, you're failing them.
They're recording 6 songs. What a Wonderful World, right in the corner where you are. Count on Me, Agua Es, which translates to Water Is, Dios está aquí, which translates to God is here, and Prayer of St. Francis. The students will be done recording today, but there's still a ton of post-production work to get done, picking the right takes, mixing, mastering, but they hope to have the CD done by September. In Williamsburg, Emily Drewby, Currents News.
Still to come on Currents News, in the midst of Holy Week, for the first time, no religion has topped a survey of Americans' religious identity. And an exclusive look at the history behind the Pope's Way of the Cross at the Roman Colisseum, how a place of bloodshed and violence became the site for meditation on the last hours of Jesus' life. We'll be right back. For the first time ever, Americans saying that they have no religious beliefs are at the top of the long-running General Social Survey. The non-religious totaled 23.1%, edging out Catholics who stood at 23%. Evangelicals finished third in the poll at 22.5%. Researchers have been asking about beliefs for 44 years. Now a Currents News exclusive look at the history behind the Pope's Way of the Cross at the Roman Colisseum. The tradition has been passed down by popes for centuries. Melissa Butts reports from Rome.
Starting here at a cross placed right in the middle of the Colosseum, popes for years have come here on Good Friday to celebrate the Way of the Cross. During Lent, a common practice is focusing on Jesus' passion on the cross. Yet this religious tradition dates back centuries in Rome. The Colosseum, which frequently saw bloodshed and violence, became one of the most unlikely places to meditate on the Way of the Cross. Yet the monument's technical director, Barbara Nazaro, explains when this prayer began here. A series of stations are made in the 1800s, like this one behind me. It was reconstructed 2 years ago from the original pieces in order to be able to do the Way of the Cross. Therefore, the Way of the Cross is an ancient tradition. She said at first stations would be marked by tombs, but as they wore away, this religious practice becomes forgotten. Years later, to avoid the destruction of this historical arena, the Way of the Cross makes a comeback. The first one to revive it was Pope John XXIII, who made only one station. Then, with Paul VI, the Way of the Cross began again. It wasn't followed with tombs or stations that didn't exist anymore, but instead with a procession. Then it continues to develop, leading even outside and ends under the current terrace of the Temple of Venus in Rome. This is where popes continue to pray the Way of the Cross on Good Friday of every year. A selected few start at the cross inside the Colosseum, pray at each of the stations inside, and then end outside the monument. It's been many, many years since the last pope entered the Colosseum to pray them. John Paul II was the last one to do so. It's a deep and very heartfelt religious practice. This year, the meditations for the stations will be written by an Italian nun, Sister Eugenia Bonetti, who has first-hand experience fighting against human trafficking. Thus, this will be the central focus of this special prayer on Good Friday.
The Good Friday devotion in Rome is the world's most followed, with millions watching on TV and tens of thousands in attendance at the Colosseum. That is Currents News. I'm Michelle Powers. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.